Hey Scribe, welcome back to the Right Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Williams, best-selling romance author, book coach, and founder of Serenade Publishing. Today I've got something really special for all of you who dream of being traditionally published, or you want to understand what goes on behind the scenes at one of the world's biggest publishing houses. I'm thrilled to be joined by Sophie Hamley, who writes best-selling fiction as Sophie Green and works at a publisher at Hachette Australia. She's worn just about every hat in the book world: bookseller, editor, literary agent, ghostwriter, and she doesn't hold back in this interview. Sophie shares honest, insider advice on everything from querying agents and writing pitches to whether self-published authors can break into traditional publishing and how BookTok is changing the game. If you've ever wondered what publishers are really looking for or how to give your manuscript the best possible chance, this is a must-listen episode. Let's go. I am so excited to introduce you all to author and publisher Sophie Green. How are you today, Sophie?
I'm very well, thank you, Sarah. But you probably will see my real name on the screen as well, which is Sophie Hamley. So Sophie Green is my nom de plume, shall we say, but not a very big difference.
Yes. I was going to explain the two names to us. I thought of it as soon as I said it too. So Sophie, tell us a little bit about your background and the books that you've written.
So my background in books and publishing is fairly extensive. I started as a bookseller while I was at university, and that went for 5 years. And that was an independent bookshop in Sydney. And then I was in a children's bookshop in Vancouver, BC for a year. And children's book selling is quite different, and I loved it because it's a lot of recommending, it's a lot of hand selling. So I got to have the spectrum of book selling, and I've long maintained that that's the best background I could have had as either a publisher or a writer. So from there, I came back and I applied for a legal job at a publishing company and didn't get it, but I was offered an editorial job and have stayed pretty much in the editorial path with some detours to the online world. I worked as a web producer for a while and writing content, things like that. And then I was a senior editor at HarperCollins and then a literary agent for 8 years. And I've been a publisher at Hachette for 11 years, mainly specializing in nonfiction, but now publishing some fiction. And I've been writing books for a really long time. The first Sophie Green book came out in 2017, but before that I had 8 romance novels under a completely different name, and I ghost wrote some nonfiction. So I've written quite a few things and published quite a few as well.
Excellent. So I feel like we are in good hands with you. You know everything there is to know about publishing.
Well, if I don't, it's entirely my fault.
Absolutely. So I will just preface that we are in Australia and we will be talking about the Australian market, I guess, mostly today. So just for any of my international viewers, we will try and word this as much as we can for you as well, but generally this is for the Aussies. All right, so your job at Hachette, tell us, did they get you because of all your experience and that sort of thing? That's how you came to Hachette?
No, I asked for this job, which is what happens when you're in an industry for a while. You tend to not have to interview necessarily. So that's how I got my job as a literary agent. Well, actually, I didn't ask for that. I was approached for that. And then there was a vacancy at Hachette, and I really wanted to work at the company, and I just made an approach and went through, the normal processes thereafter. But yeah, that's how it happened.
Yeah, amazing. And tell me, agents really necessary in 2026?
I am very fond of saying that if every published author in Australia wanted an agent, they couldn't have one because there aren't enough agents, and there never are going to be in this territory. It's just too small. So no, agents aren't necessary. It's a question of whether an author wants an agent. I do think where agents can be very useful is with fiction, and that's because of the pure numbers of fiction submissions that happen. I look at our submissions inbox at Hachette, and there are thousands per year, and an agent is also receiving those submissions, but the focus of their job is to look at submissions amongst other things and find clients, whereas the focus of a publisher's job is to make books. So we look at submissions in order to make books, but agents are much more focused, I think, on the submissions themselves, and we rely on them to do that. We rely on them to curate the submissions and find clients and bring them to us. A lot of nonfiction writers, I think, don't actually ever consider going to an agent. When I was an agent, I received very few nonfiction submissions, and I know that as a publisher, we receive a lot of nonfiction in the submissions inbox. So I think nonfiction writers tend to go direct to publishers. Children's writers certainly go direct to publishers because there just aren't a lot of agents who handle children's books. But novelists will probably go to both, and novelists are the ones more likely to be picked up by an agent. So I think, yeah, if you're writing fiction, submit, I always say this anyway, submit everywhere you think is likely to be, every agent, every publisher that you think is likely for what you're writing, because you may as well spread the risk, so to speak. But yeah, so nonfiction, kids, pick your agents, basically. Pick the ones who are looking after those areas.
Brilliant. So when we are submitting to agents and publishers, let's be bold. How many of those manuscripts actually, or the submissions actually get read, and how many just get thrown away?
Most of them aren't read, and that's because they shouldn't be. I'm going to be very blunt, Sarah,
Yep.
but you've seen my TikTok video, so you know that I'm in the business of giving direct advice here because I don't think it serves the writers to be anything less than direct about it. Most of them aren't read much at all because the pitch / query / submission letter is just not up to scratch. And so as soon as you're seeing that introductory text from a writer and it's not in great shape, it's a signifier that what's coming next in the manuscript is not going to be in great shape either. So we've already had our expectations managed, shall we say, and then it's just a case of time. And I think, as with any reader in a bookshop, we all go into bookshops and we pick up books that we think look good. We look at the back cover blurb, and then we may look at the first page or so. That's how much we're giving it. And agents and publishers are no different. We are readers too. So it sounds tough, but I also think the writers who are submitting probably don't give published books any more than a page or two to decide whether they want to read it.
Yeah, I've definitely been submitted manuscripts, and I have a very obvious, this is how you submit to me. And if people can't even follow directions, I'm like, I'm not sure I want to work with you. You can't even follow directions.
Well, because it's like, it is applying for a job, actually. You're applying for the job of being a published author with that publisher. And same as if you're not addressing the criteria that's in a job advertisement for that particular job, you're not going to get an interview. So it is really no different to any of that. And I would encourage writers to think of it that way, that they're applying for the job of being a published writer or a published author, if they prefer that term, and basically behave accordingly, behave professionally. And that's often where it falls down, is just this lack of professional behavior from the start. But the writer wants the publisher or the agent to be professional, and accordingly, we would expect the same of them.
So how do you think self-publishing has changed the industry within Australia?
I think it's probably changed it overseas most, at least for now. So there are certainly changes afoot. And I guess the biggest change is that self-published authors can now reach readers a lot more easily than they used to be able to when self-publishing was only in print. And so it seems, and I will admit that from the traditionally published side, it took a little while to cotton on to the fact that there was a lot of self-publishing activity going on, because if you didn't have a KU subscription and you weren't aware of what was happening and all the romance conventions, for example, then the extent of it wasn't quite clear. But I think it's a really exciting part of it, partly because traditional publishing can't accommodate the pace of publishing for a lot of the authors who are self-publishing. So if you're a romance writer and you want to put out 4 to 6 books a year, most traditional publishing companies can't accommodate that. And that's because retailers won't accommodate that. So I think we're at a really interesting time of quite a few writers who are independently published, self-published, being able to form that connection with readers. And then that's sort of becoming its own organism in a way. The readers are signifying what they want to the writers who are responding. And this is all happening very quickly because, of course, there's a faster turnaround for an independently published author than it is for a traditionally published author. Now, there are, of course, things that traditional publishing can do that are harder for independently published authors. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting, exciting time, because I think we're having input from readers in particular in a way that we just have never been able to have before. So I love that as a publisher. I love being able to see what readers are really interested in.
Absolutely. So what do you think, or what is Hachette really trying to acquire at the moment? Is it the romance novels? Is it more of the kids novels? Are there any like niches within that?
Because we're a large publisher, we look across the board basically. And so yes, within fiction we are looking at romance. In fact, I publish some romance published Tierney Page, who's a well-known BookToker originally, and now has her second novel about to come out, third novel next year. And I've commissioned another romance writer whose first novel will be out in July next year. So we are looking at romance, we're looking at romantasy, we're looking at fantasy, but we can't take on many titles a year because we have a certain number of slots, basically. And so that means that even if we see something that we really love, it may not be right for our list. So sometimes writers will hear publishers say, I love it, but it's not right for my list. And it can sound like we're fobbing them off when actually not. Like that's really what happens, is that just say we read a crime novel and we love it, but we might actually be publishing something with a slightly similar storyline, and we can't actually therefore take on that second novel. So what we're looking for is always great stories well told, and can just be a matter of timing as to when we can publish them or if we can. Not the non-fiction space has changed a huge amount, and that changed mainly during the pandemic. So people wanted to read escapism more than they wanted to read reality. They understand that. Memoir has almost fallen off a cliff, which is disappointing because a lot of people have great personal stories. But what's also changing at the same time as all of this is traditional media and the ways we reach readers. So certain non-fiction stories we used to go through traditional media, a lot of those avenues aren't there anymore. So it is becoming very much about which sorts of stories can reach readers and how we can help the authors reach the readers. In children's, a lot of people say middle grade is tough. I think that's true for Australian authors, yes, probably for all writers. But, our children's publisher has just commissioned a whole brace of titles that are across the board, picture book, middle grade, YA. So I think there's always a place for great Australian stories in children's publishing. It can just take longer for them to emerge to the general public with any realization of what's going on, because children's publishing functions so differently to adults publishing generally. Yeah. And if we had a longer episode, I could go into that, but it just takes longer. It takes longer for a lot of people to realize which children's books are out there. Literary fiction is tougher than it used to be. We used to be able to say, oh, here's this big literary debut. I think most people are now more interested in more commercially inclined stories, and I do think that BookTok's had a huge amount to do with that, which is not a bad thing at all.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk to you about BookTok and TikTok. And of course, you and the lovely Tierney Page came to the Sunshine Coast Fiction Festival in November 25, and we loved having you there. Thank you so much.
It was great to be there. There was so much fun and so much love in the room for books. It was great.
It was brilliant. Can't wait to do it again. So Tierney, obviously, she did make her start on TikTok as a book reviewer. What do you believe has made her such a successful writer? Is it did you pick her up because she had a great story, but she also had this huge following? Or
it had to be both. So I actually contacted her a couple of years ago, I think it was, or at least I flagged to our head of fiction, Rebecca Saunders, about Tierney being brilliant online. This is before Tierney was even talking about writing, because I was watching her videos, and I just said, there's this BookToker called Tierney Reads. I didn't know her last name at the time, and I just said, she's really funny and she's really clever. I would keep an eye on her because she might be a great writer. Mm-hmm. And so my instinct looking at what Tierney was doing online was that what she was saying, and she's coming up with these phrases, she's talking about books in a particular way. It was the way she was using language that really interested me. And so it wasn't just, she's talking about books that I'm interested in. It was the fact that I got a Kindle Unlimited subscription because of her, because she was talking about these books in such a persuasive way. Other people have come up to her at various events and said exactly the same thing. I've got a KU subscription because of you. So it was the way she was talking about the books, it was the language she was using, it was the phrases she was coming up with. I just kept every single video I was thinking, this is so interesting. So when she started to talk about writing, I talked to Rebecca again and said, well, okay, now she's writing, let's drop her a line. And then she decided to self-publish that first book, and that was a timing thing, that she wanted to have it out a little faster than we could have put it out. Totally understand. Then happily she came back to us. So yeah, look, the platform absolutely is part of it. That's why we know about her. She, as a writer, is getting better and better with every book. Now, I'm reading her manuscripts when they're delivered, and because I'm the doing the first structural edit on them. So number 2 is coming out early next year. Number 3, the middle of next year. She's just getting better and better every manuscript. So that's a rate of change that is quite rare. And that's not to say that the other brother, her first book was not great. It was. That's why we wanted to publish it. Because I have to also say the platform could have been amazing. If the writing wasn't, we wouldn't have been interested. So she had to be a great writer, but she's just, yeah, it's fantastic. I love her writing. And yeah, so she's just got that mind where she's so interested in writing and learning and getting better and having better character development and all those sorts of things. So it's very satisfying all round to be publishing her.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you wouldn't say, though, to the average person who's never even been on TikTok, jump on TikTok now. It's the only way you're going to get a deal.
No, because that's definitely not true. It always comes back to the writing, because as much as the platform is important now, and I'm also this has also been a change, just for your audience to know. In the past year or so, I've definitely seen a change in terms of how much my colleagues are interested in an author having a platform, and I think that's because retailers are asking. And I totally understand, as someone who's had to learn how to do content myself, that's a fairly terrifying prospect of, God, I want to be a writer. Do I really have to learn to be a content creator as well? I tend to see it as, if you can reframe it to communication with the reader. If you think about this as me communicating with my readers or communicating with potential readers, it actually makes it a lot more easier to get your head around it. I think thinking of it as I've got to create content makes it feel a lot harder when it's not a writer's core competency at all. Like being on camera, nothing about it is anyone's core competency when what they've been doing is writing. But it is becoming a factor, I think, partly because of what I said earlier about traditional media getting really hard. Those channels are being diminished by the day. And this is a way for writers to reach their readers, and it can be a really satisfying and fun one. Now, what publishers need to do in terms of helping writers with that is a separate question. And I think, again, we're in a lot of change. This is publishers also learning what readers are looking for, and not demanding, that could be too strong a term, but just what readers expect, I guess, from writers these days. So it's been a pace of change that's been extremely rapid for everyone concerned. And I think we're all just doing our best, Sarah.
Yeah, well, definitely. And I think the people who have done really well out of TikTok, Kat T. Mason, Tenny Page, a few others, were the really early adopters. So they really were in there and, pre-COVID sort. And I think it's been fantastic for them. I only jumped on TikTok maybe 6 months ago, and it's a hard beast to break. It is not easy.
Yeah, because there are a lot of people on there making content. And so if you were a writer thinking, well, I want to become a really big book talker, you need to have a different angle. So Tierney's angle remains how she talks about books, the way she phrases things. It's particular to her, so therefore we got to know her through the way she was talking about books. And then that led into how she was writing her own books. So I think, trying to get on TikTok now as a reviewer of other people's books and thinking you're going to make a dent, I think it's hard to do that. But then, of course, that begs the question, what should a writer do?
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, could go on at length.
I think we all just need to watch for the next platform that comes along and jump on that really nice and early.
Yeah. I also think, just as a tip, I think people overlook YouTube. So YouTube is search-based social, and search-based social is evergreen, and TikTok is also search-based social, but TikTok has, yes, a lot of people on it reviewing books. YouTube is a place that a lot of people go to find information, to find their book recommendations. So I think it's worth thinking about that too, particularly if you're already on YouTube looking for things, which most people are. So if you're a writer looking for information on YouTube, someone else will be out there looking for information as well. You might be the one to provide it.
Absolutely. And the joy, because they're both video, you can post on both platforms. Absolutely. If you like. I certainly post on TikTok and Instagram, and things that I think will do really good on Instagram don't, but they do well on TikTok, and vice versa. I'm like, I didn't think that would happen.
Yeah, they're strange beasts, the platforms.
All right. So for the authors who have already published, they've just independently published. For whatever reason, it didn't get through with an agent or a publisher, and they've just decided to independently publish, or maybe they wanted to print to publish lots and lots and lots of books. So then, if they want to make the move into traditional publishing and actually go for it, like for example, I know Stephanie Holmes did this. She was pursuing a traditional deal. How does publishers feel about that? Would they ever acquire a book that's already been previously published, self-published? Or would they rather start with something fresh and new?
Well, I did because Tierney's first book was already self-published. So she had published it and then she decided she wanted traditional publication for it and the ensuing books. And certainly, yeah, look, what I've seen in the last little while is agents picking up independently published authors and coming to us and saying, here's this author who has 3 books out in this series. The 4th book, this was something recently, the 4th book's coming out. Would you be interested? Now, we did not say no because those books have been published. The reason why we said no is the audio rights have been sold separately and we would like to produce audiobooks. So, but I certainly looked at that and thought, well, there's a whole series ready to go. I was quite disappointed that I couldn't take it any further. So yeah, I think the attitude a few years ago was, well, that's already been published. No, we're not going to look at it. But now, because the mechanism of traditional publishing means putting books into bookshops in a way that is very difficult for independent authors, that's where we can come in and say, all right, we can take you to a bigger readership and we can also offer you some marketing publicity support that you haven't otherwise had. Distribution is a huge part of traditional publishing that is very hard for indie authors to crack. And that's what traditional publishers can help offer. Is saying we have this massive warehouse and these trucks that go out across Australia and they will take your books to Broome and to Hobart and to Cairns and Alice Springs and places that are hard for them to get to in print otherwise. So I think it's just a case for the authors of working out what's best for them. What do they want with their books? It may be that they want to independently publish a particular series, for example, and then they might have a standalone. They think, I really want that one to be traditionally published. And then they can go to agents and publishers and say, well, here are I've already self-published these 4 in a series, and this is the success these have had. Here's my new title. And that publisher or agent may well say, oh, great, we're interested in that. But also, how about those 4?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess on the flip side, if you've written your first book and it's, your apprentice book, the one that you write and you're learning everything, and maybe it didn't sell very well, and then you've improved and you're writing a new one and you want to submit that to publishers, do you think maybe the writer needs to make that decision on whether to pull down the previous book, which maybe...
Again, personally, it's up to them because, look, no one's first book is ever going to be their best. Let's put it that way. But if you have readers who have loved it, there might be reviews for it saying how great it is. Why pull that down? It's already there. Or it could be a question also for your agent or publisher. And I think it's great to have those questions up front and feel like you can ask them. I do hear from time to time writers saying, I didn't feel like I could ask my publisher that. It's like you can always ask the publisher. It may be that the publisher is just head down. It's the amount of email I get every day. Quite often I miss things. Things come in and then they're gone because another 24 emails have come in right after them very quickly. So sometimes it's just that an author's asked a question and the publisher hasn't seen it for whatever reason. Doesn't mean we don't want to answer it. Just means missed it. Yes. So I'd say always feel like you can ask your publisher and your agent anything to do with your books because we're all interested in the same thing, which is taking great books to readers.
Absolutely. And of course, we do want to give publishers the absolute best book we can give. So we shouldn't be giving them first drafts.
Oh, never.
Or a first draft.
Never, ever, ever, ever.
So at what point would you recommend that an author does submit? Is it after they've had a publisher, they've paid, not a publisher, an editor, after they've paid an editor to look through it, or after a couple of beta readers? Where would you kind of say?
So I think part of the development I've seen with independent publishing is this real focus on beta readers and also paying independent editors. These are not things that the publishing industry has ever expected writers to do, as find readers or go to an editor. And I think that having a freelance editor is a significant expense for a lot of writers, regardless of where they are in their life circumstance, right? So it's a significant investment of money and time. And I always say that if you are going to pay a freelance editor, you better be sure you know what to do with the feedback they send you, because otherwise you've wasted your time and money. So we certainly do not expect any writer to pay a freelancer to edit their manuscript ever. We also don't expect you to have sent it out to other readers. So it's then a question of, how is a writer meant to know? Well, you've got to trust your instincts and also be honest with yourself as a writer. So I think as writers can talk themselves into saying, well, this is ready now, but they know, at a certain level, they know that it's not ready, but they're hoping it's ready. They're thinking, oh, well, if I just send it out now, I've finished it, I'll send it out, but they know it's not ready.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually trying to get out of your own way a bit there, stop talking yourself into putting things in the way of good writing, actually. So stop talking yourself into it being ready when it's not, and give it at least 2 or 3 drafts of that first novel you've ever written, and then put it aside for a while and come back to it. And it's the putting it aside and coming back to it that is, everyone gives that advice because it's valuable. You will always see things when you go away from something for a while. So at the point in time we're speaking, I have a structural report to address for my book that's out next year. I actually haven't been able to get to it, and I've had it for a couple of weeks, but that's a good thing, actually. So I'm not worried about that, because the longer I'm separated from my original manuscript, the better it will be when I go back to it and look at it with fresh eyes. So sometimes I think maybe subconsciously delay going back to it, because I think I need a bit more time for that to actually just marinate in the back of my brain. So it's about learning to be patient. And I know that writers are impatient. They finish their draft and they're like, I just want to get it out and see what people think. But please do the best by your own work. And that means being patient, especially with your very first manuscript and your second. And yeah, there's plenty of time to send things off. There's not plenty of time to regret it.
You really do get that one chance to make a really good impression. So you really do want to make it the best you can. So
absolutely. Do your best by your own work. You put all that time into it. It's like, I always implore writers, please do the best by yourself and don't hurry. Don't be impatient, because that's the biggest enemy I see for all sorts of things. Manuscripts being sent in, query letters, all sorts of things. The submission process itself, impatience will kill a lot of books before they even get out of the gate.
Yes. So let's go through the process a little bit. So say we come to Hachette, we look at your website, it's got all your instructions on how to do that. So we have to follow it. Tell me about specifically writing the pitch. I know you have a lot to say on this.
I do, because I give a talk on it every year to the Emerging Writers Festival. In fact, the last couple of years I've done it twice. I've done it once online and once in person. So I think the pitch is increasingly important when there are so many submissions coming in. You want to be able to grab someone's attention, just as you want the back cover blurb on a book to grab your attention as a reader. You want to think, yes, I have to read that. What I tend to I've distilled the pitch writing to facts and feelings. So it's basically write down the facts of the story, and then write down what a reader is going to experience when they read it. So that's by way of, what sort of feelings are they going to have? And then the pitch should come out of that. It's really important to understand that writing a pitch is a different skill to writing whatever manuscript you're writing. I understand that a lot of writers don't want to have to write a pitch and a pitch letter to go with it, but you have to. And you have to partly because it's in the best interest of your work. As I said before, you've put all that time and energy into it. You want to do the best by it. This is the way you do the best by it. And you be patient with yourself in learning how to craft that pitch, and then also write the letter. Because this is the job interview, that letter. This is how to get an agent or a publisher's attention. And it is quite a skill. That's why I've taught actually whole workshops on it in the past, because it takes a really long time to be able to step back from your own work and see it clearly enough to write about it in a way that tells someone else why they want to read it more than any other book.
Absolutely. And of course, writing the submissions and the pitches isn't the only way we can get in front of publishers and agents. I know the Romance Writers of Australia, that was the first time I ever pitched to anyone a few years ago. I know that can be really nerve-wracking, but do you prefer the in-person sort of pitches because you actually really do get to know the other person?
I do enjoy them. I do think it's really nerve-wracking for writers. And so I always say to them, please just read your pitch if you would rather, because I think it's a really big thing to ask a writer to essentially perform a pitch, because that's not a core competency either. We're not actors. So to sit there and have memorized your lines basically and then deliver them, I think that's really stressful. And it's a piece of writing. So I'm happy for you to read it out loud, to me at least. But I enjoy it because I do get to meet people. I do enjoy meeting people because I'm more of an extrovert than an introvert, and getting a sense of why they've written this and having the chance to ask questions. I think that's why I prefer the in-person pitch, is the opportunity to have a conversation. Also because, yes, it will help me see things faster than what's coming into the inbox, the submissions inbox, because there's just so much in there. Having said that, where the in-person pitch process can be tricky for those of us on the industry side is that if we want to read something, there's usually an expectation that it's looked at very quickly, and we simply just don't have a ton of time to read things quickly because, as I mentioned, the email that comes in, I think email is multiplying and has done since COVID. So a lot of my day is spent answering email, and that's while I'm trying to be a publisher as well and be in meetings. And so reading is the least part of what I get to do. And a lot of that reading time has to be given to the books that we're publishing. So from my perspective, the biggest issue we have is time to look at submissions, to consider them properly, to take them through the process. I don't have a solution for it other than the destruction of emails.
Gosh. Well, thank you so much. I would love to know, what is your final advice for writers?
Enjoy it. I think we can really load up a manuscript with a whole lot of expectation and make it try to do a lot of work for us and forget that we should be doing this writing thing because we enjoy it. So if you're not enjoying it, don't persist. It might be that writing is not the thing for you. It might be that your art form is something else altogether. That's okay. So enjoy it going into it, because you'll need to remember you enjoy it if you do get published and you're going through an editorial process and you're thinking, why did I do this to myself?
That's it. That's it. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Sophie. I really do appreciate that. Where can we find you on TikTok?
So on TikTok, I'm under my author name, Sophie Green Books, and that's where you'll also find me on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, because I tend to publish across all of those, and Substack now as well, just to add a platform. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for your time today. I know everyone watching will have really learned a lot from you. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
I hope you found that conversation with Sophie as eye-opening and encouraging as I did. Whether you're querying for the first time or considering a switch from indie to traditional publishing, remember, you only get one chance to make a first impression. Take your time, do your best, and always act with professionalism. That's what Sophie's advice kept circling back to. And exciting news, Sophie will be teaching a masterclass at the Queenstown Writing Retreat this March. So if you've got a burning question for her or just want to soak up more of her publishing wisdom, book your spot today at serenadepublishing.com. While you're there, don't forget to grab my free brainstorming fun sheet. And if you're ready to level up your craft, check out Fiction Writing Academy, my self-paced course designed to take you from idea to polished manuscript. Thanks for being here with me on the Write Podcast. Until next week, remember, you are a writer. Believe it, own it, and keep going. Your readers are waiting.